Hello, my name is Zadok. I live on Red Fox Hill, and I'm going to tell you about a Christmas party that took place on the hill. One of the creatures in this story is a snow goose named Windy. A hunter's bullet had broken his wing, and after being rescued by the paws and the lady, he became a house goose living with us. I can tell you he is quite a character. So here we go. The story is titled The Christmas Party. The storm in which Oliver had saved Zoe was followed by a number of others, and the snowbanks were now very high. At least, to paws like me they were very high, but the heaps of snow were fun. We would climb to the top of a bank and slide down on our tummies and on our backs. It didn't matter which, because we had fun. Windy had the best fun of all. He would stand at the bottom of the snowbank and honk. The lady would pick him up, carry him to the top of the bank, and set him down. He would tuck his legs under his body and wiggle until he started to slide. Then, honking loudly, he would hurtle to the bottom, fall over, stand up, shake the snow from his feathers, and honk until the lady helped him all over again. Finally, she would get tired and say, "Windy, enough is enough. Go and sit down and watch the fun." Windy, however, knew what to do. He would go to her and gently rub his head on her cheek, and she would sigh and say, "Okay, Windy, one more time." Of course, it was never one more time. It was one more of many more times. Oliver tried to slide once, but ended up as a ball of snow at the bottom of the bank, and he was not happy, and told us sliding was for children. It was not for barred owls, and he went and sat on his branch. Regin and Huguette, they couldn't slide. They weren't heavy enough, so they simply tucked their tails over their heads and pretended they were a ball and rolled down the slope. We were a happy, loving family, and all was well on Red Fox Hill. One evening, after an afternoon of sliding, we were all sitting round the fire, and the lady said, "It's time for our annual party." "What's a party, Ziva?" asked Windy. "Well," said Ziva, "there are many kinds of parties. Birthday parties, which we have whenever our birthday rolls around, and special parties that are only held at special times of the year." "What's a year?" asked Windy. Zoe, who was lying on her cushion, looked at Windy from below the fringe of hair over her eyes. "Windy," she said, "for once, just listen. I'm sure you'll understand in the end." Windy replied, "Okay, if I don't, I'll just ask again." And he would. He was the most curious creature I had ever met. What's more, he remembered what he was told better than I did, and I think I've a good memory. Ziva, who was very fond of Windy, said, "Windy, what did we do when it was Zelo's birthday?" "Well," said Windy, "we had lots of treats. Zelo got a big bone to chew." "You're right," Ziva told her. "However, the annual party that the lady is planning will be much bigger than Zelo's birthday party. There'll be lots of food and many people." "Can anyone come?" asked Windy. "Well, not just anyone," replied Ziva. "Only our Red Fox Hill friends and our neighbors on the range road will be invited." Windy was silent for a moment, but he had a thoughtful look on his face. He was thinking, and I should have known that when Windy began thinking, there was always something strange that might occur. But I was too busy remembering things about the past annual parties that had been so much fun. A date was set, and preparations for the party began. The house was filled with nose-twitching smells of baking. The lady was a good cook, and there were all sorts of delicious pies and tarts and cakes and scones and cookies, and then she made dips and hors d'oeuvres and nibbles with crackers and cheese, and my favorite little sausages wrapped in pastry. The party was going to be a great success. It always was. The great day dawned, and with it another storm. For a while we lost electric power, but as we had wood stoves and oil lamps, we were snug, warm, secure, and ready to receive visitors. Then the lights flickered, and the power came back on. "Oh, bless those hydro workers," the lady said. "They truly are angels, and they're just in time, as people will be here very soon." The guests began arriving in the late afternoon. The lady's friend Alain, the man who had the garage at the end of the road, came with his wife, mother, and father. Robert, Alain's brother, his wife, and their grandchildren came, as well as the man who kept the chickens. The elderly couple called the Browns, who lived in the stone house, came. Dr. Bob the vet was also a guest, and he embarrassed me by prodding and poking at me just to make sure I was still peppy, as he put it. The man who drove the truck with the straw bales for Windy's shelter came, and with him were his wife and 2 children. And all of these visitors brought food to add to the enormous array on the table. We were going to have a good party. Now, at this point in the story, something very exciting happens. However, it's too long to tell you now. You will have to read all of the story just to find out what took place. We all trekked back up the hill to the house, and soon we were tucking into food and talking about what had happened. Dr. Bob washed my paws and said they'd be fine in a couple of days. Everyone wanted to pat me, but all I thought about was Claude, who was alive, and yes, I thought about myself too. Suddenly, there was a sharp rap on the front door. The only creature who did that was Windy. When he wanted to come into the house, he'd rap on the door with his beak. And then I remembered his absence at the scene of the accident. Where had he been? The lady opened the door. There was Windy, and behind him all our other friends who lived on Red Fox Hill. Windy walked in, followed by Bill and Burl the beavers, Rene the fox, a cloud of chickadees, a flight of 8 blue jays, Oliver the barred owl, and 2 very shy chipmunks. The man who drove the truck couldn't believe his eyes, and all the children just stood there staring. Then, most amazing of all, was when the creatures formed a line and greeted the humans who were present. The animals shook paws, and the birds gently rubbed their beaks on the cheeks of the children and their parents. It was the most amazing sight that I had ever seen. The lady's friend was the one who made the next move when he said, "Okay, let's get out the bird seed and the animal treats." And soon there were bowls of seed on the table. Runny got half a chicken, which he began to devour under the table. The chickadees sat on the chandelier and dove down for a seed ever so often. The man with the truck went outside and came back with some willow branches for the beavers. "Prime wood, this," said Bill as he gnawed at a piece of bark. "You can say that again, prime wood," said Burl, chewing away. The blue jays were perched on the curtain rail and kept diving in for sunflower seeds. "Don't be greedy," warned Arthur, their father. The chipmunk sat on the mantelpiece, and Huguette bossed raging around, telling him just what seeds she wanted. Dr. Bob fed Oliver choice pieces of stewing beef, and we paws had all the treats we could ever imagine. I looked at Windy. He was so happy. He knew that inviting all the creatures from Red Fox Hill, who were our friends, was a good idea. He walked around the table and looked at all the food. There was a bowl of corn for him, and someone offered it to him. But no, being Windy, his eyes were set on what he wanted. Alain's wife had brought some homemade millefeuille. Windy stopped by the plate and stuck his beak into one of the pastries. He backed away, I suppose expecting to have a little of the pastry in his mouth. But no, he was stuck. He tried to open his beak, but he couldn't. His beak was tight shut, stuck in the pastry. Dr. Bob and the truck driver saw this and began to laugh, and so did the rest of the party guests. Do what he might, Windy could not get rid of the milfoil. He shook his head, he rolled his head, he put his head on the floor and brought it up quickly. To no effect. He was really stuck. By this time, all the humans and the creatures in the room were in stitches of laughter. Finally, Rene, who was under the table with the remains of the chicken, took pity on him and said, "Here, Windy, I'll help you." Windy bent his head, and with a quick swipe of his paw, Rene scooped the pastry from Windy's beak, gathered it together with what was left of the chicken. "Phew," said Windy. "I thought I was going to be there forever. Now, may I have it back so I can eat it?" "No," said Rene. "Finders keepers, losers weepers." And he proceeded to have Windy's dessert with his main course of chicken. Surely, I thought, Windy would go back to his bowl of corn and relax. No, that was not how Windy worked. He looked at Zelo, who was gnawing on a really juicy bone. Zelo caught his look, and after giving the bone one last lick, came and sat beside Windy. Zelo barked once. Everyone stopped talking, and the room was perfectly silent. Oh no, I thought, and lay down, putting my paws over my ears. Windy raised his head to the ceiling, and then Zelo did the same, and they began their duet, a goose song and an imitation wolf howl. The noise was absolutely appalling. People and creatures all covered their ears. Windy went on and on, honking and yodeling and improvising. And Zelo howled and double howled, whatever that is, and let loose his extended warbling howl. Fortunately, the front door swung open, and Sam stood there. "What is that dreadful noise?" he asked. The lady quickly took charge. "Windy and Zelo," she said, "that was lovely. But this room, so full of people, is too small. Could you do it again, say at the back of the house near the snowbank?" Everyone hoped Windy and Zelo would agree to go outside, and they were more than willing to oblige, and off they went to enjoy themselves. Sam said, "I came back from my truck, but also to tell you that Claude is going to be fine and his break isn't too bad. The doctor said that if we hadn't have pulled him out from under the tree, he would have died." Everyone was happy. Sam ate his fill, along with the beavers, birds, chipmunks, a fox, an owl, and 4 paws, all of whom were dear friends. He looked around and said, "My wife won't believe this." And Dr. Bob said, "I'm here, and I don't believe it." Eventually, people and creatures began to leave for homes and nests and lodges and dens. It had been a wonderful party. And so the year ended, and what a year it had been. Our little family had grown, we had seen death and new life, we had known sadness and happiness, we'd had some interesting adventures, and above all, we had learned a number of very important lessons. We were all part of the unbreakable circle of life. We were part of the circle and would be until the end of our days. But most importantly, we were all on Red Fox Hill because of one human, that very special lady, a kind, generous, compassionate, caring human. Red Fox Hill was hers, and she and all of us were part of Red Fox Hill. We were bound together forever by ties of love, affection, and memories. Life here did not stop with the end of the party. Life would go on, and we with it. That night, as I lay on my blanket, questions wandered through my mind. Would Oliver stay? Would Windy leave us to join his brothers and sisters when they flew north in the spring? Would Rene find a mate? Would Peter and Millicent return? Would the chipmunks have a family? So many questions, and so much time still ahead of us. Life here was good. We were all so lucky. Somewhere deep inside, I knew we would continue to be part of the circle of life. The future lay ahead, and oh, what fun we would have on our beloved Red Fox Hill.